The woman was captured by the enemy. She was held on a vast, snowy mountain, hanging by a thread. Top American sniper Viper lay in ambush, observing the battlefield. He set up a heavy sniper rifle. With a single shot, he hit the target. The bullet severed the kidnapper's entire arm. Bright red blood instantly bloomed on the snowy ground. The terrified woman was finally rescued. Not long ago, Viper had received a difficult mission to protect Allied forces. He was the first to position himself in a field overgrown with weeds. He set up his Barrett heavy sniper rifle. He was ready to scout enemy movements and survey the terrain. Meanwhile, his teammate, White, idly took out a photo of his girlfriend. Viper concealed his envious gaze. He turned his head away. On a brutal battlefield, there was no room for distraction. A large group of retreating allies finally arrived on foot, but the enemy was in relentless pursuit with heavy machine guns. Viper estimated that the enemy was over 870 meters away. At this range, he was fully confident he could complete the mission. Viper took to shots, killing two enemies. He flipped over a truck. Just as Viper was about to retreat, a large group of armed fighters suddenly appeared. Viper fired a cold shot, throwing the enemy into chaos. The panicked enemy hastily set up mortars and fired wildly. Viper had no choice but to request reinforcements from command, but the commander chose to cower in fear. He cut off communications and fled alone. Realizing he had been abandoned, Viper resolved to fight to the end. He and White aimed at the helicopter overhead and fired continuously, but a barrage of bullets instantly killed White on the spot. Viper had no time to escape. He fought desperately, firing multiple shots. Finally, he hit the helicopter's rotor. Thick black smoke poured from the helicopter as it plummeted off a cliff. After the battle, Viper left behind his days with cold steel weapons. He took his dog and moved to a remote forest. He began the peaceful life he had longed for. But 3 years later, an unexpected visitor knocked on Viper's door. Colonel Jackson came straight to the point. He hoped that the sharpshooting Viper would lend his skills. It turned out that intelligence had recently intercepted a terrifying message. Someone was planning to assassinate the president from a distance of 1 kilometer during an upcoming speech. However, the security team could only effectively control up to 900 meters. Therefore, Jackson hoped that Viper would conduct on-site reconnaissance and stop the tragedy before it happened. Viper initially expressed skepticism about the attack. He believed that long-range shooting required consideration of too many factors. Factors such as humidity, altitude, wind direction, and even the Earth's rotation had to be accounted for. He found it hard to believe that anyone besides himself could be such a skilled marksman within the United States. Disillusioned with government officials, Viper wanted to send them away. However, Colonel Jackson continued to persuade him earnestly. He attempted to reignite Viper's sense of patriotism. That night, Viper retrieved his long-dormant sniper rifle. He placed a can on a mountain ridge 1,765 meters away, 2 points aligned ready to fire. The can was blasted apart by a single bullet. It was easy to imagine that the doomed president would soon face the same fate. An unavoidable catastrophe was looming. For the sake of national stability, Viper decided to take action. He centered his investigation on Independence Hall, scanning a 1-kilometer radius. He immediately traveled to 3 different cities. He measured the height and distance of every high-rise building. Eventually, he identified 6 potential sniper locations within Philadelphia. The day of the president's speech arrived as scheduled. Viper hid inside the Pentagon, closely monitoring the situation. Jackson had positioned a firepower team on standby. As Viper meticulously calculated the wind speed, he immediately alerted officers to heighten security. Suddenly, a police officer shot him from behind. At the same moment, the sniper rifle aimed at the president fired a deafening shot, but the one who took the bullet to the head was the Ethiopian archbishop. Wounded but alive, Viper was in shock. He dragged his injured leg and leaped out the window. Jackson ordered his men to pursue Viper, while simultaneously eliminating the officer who fired the shot. He staged the scene to make it look like Viper had attempted to assassinate the president. Viper encountered an FBI agent blocking his path. He swiftly disarmed the agent and threw him to the ground. Then, he stole a police car and sped away. Gritting his teeth through the pain, Viper floored the gas pedal. He drove into a car wash to evade the helicopters scanning the area. Slashing open the back seat of the patrol car, he retrieved a first aid kit and hastily dressed his wounds. As the police combed the city in a massive search effort, Viper risked a deadly collision while reversing at full speed. He finally crashed through a barricade and plunged into the ocean. Despite extensive police recovery efforts, his body was never found. Unbeknownst to them, Viper had already grabbed onto a cargo ship and escaped. Soon, Jackson seized the high ground in public opinion again. A news report about the arrest of the fugitive Viper quickly emerged. The entire United States was plunged into a state of panic. In order to conceal his identity, Viper had no choice but to sabotage the power switch at a pharmacy. In the dark, he made a deal with the shop owner. He purchased saline and needles required for treatment. He gritted his teeth and endured. On the brink of death, he rushed to his girlfriend's house. Sarah recognized Viper at first sight. Because Viper sent her flowers every year, Sarah, wanting to avoid suspicion from the neighbors, sent Viper to park his car in the garage. Then she returned to the house alone and called the police. Viper stormed into the house just in time. After much consideration, Sarah hung up the phone. Viper asked Sarah to help sew up his wound and write down a medication list. He wanted Sarah to buy the supplies from different pharmacies. Soon, he inhaled carbon monoxide and briefly lost consciousness. Sarah chose to trust Viper and believed he had stitched his wound. After waking up, Viper, seeking revenge, instructed Sarah to disguise herself. She was tasked with handing over a photo of a license plate to the agent. Unexpectedly, while he was observing from the side, he was also spotted by two police officers. Viper quickly splashed coffee on them. He engaged in close combat and knocked down the officer who tried to draw a gun. Then, he blended into the panicked crowd and escaped. On the other side, the agent risked being fired and sued. As he followed the leads into a confidential room to investigate, he was getting closer to exposing the truth. But Jackson also noticed the threat the agent posed. He immediately sent 3 people to kidnap the agent and take him to a factory. They began torturing him. They even used special methods to restrain the agent on a machine. A simple tug on the rope would create the illusion of a suicide. At the critical moment, the sound of gunshots rang out. The 3 kidnappers fell one after another. It turned out that disguised Viper, armed with a .22 caliber shotgun, was on a small boat 200 meters away across the lake, shooting at the kidnappers and saving the agent. Upon learning of this, Jackson was furious. He investigated Viper's bank account. He discovered that money was being transferred every year to a woman named Sarah. He immediately sent people to arrest Sarah. Sarah realized that someone with a gun had broken into her home in the dark. Outnumbered, she was still captured. At this moment, Viper was with a congressman, finding an arms dealer. The knowledgeable arms dealer is the most well-versed person in firearms in the entire state. Viper wanted to inquire about anyone, aside from himself, who could shoot a bullseye from 2,000 to 100 meters away. The arms dealer confirmed there was such a person. However, this mysterious figure was a bloodthirsty killer, who spared neither women nor children. During a time when he was being hunted by enemies, this person was blown up and became a disabled man. Viper had obtained the answer he was looking for. He guessed the killer was Uncle Beard, the disabled man in the wheelchair beside Jackson. Viper brought the congressman to the outskirts. They created a bunch of tear gas and pipe bombs. Viper personally taught the congressman how to shoot targets at long range. After the training, the 2 wore camouflage outfits and crawled into the grass. They ambushed near Uncle Beard's house. The Rolling Stones immediately drew the enemy's attention. Viper and the congressman cooperated seamlessly. They killed the 4 guards who were on high alert. Soon, Viper stormed into the house and aimed his gun at Uncle Beard. Uncle Beard gave up struggling because he had already been abandoned by Jackson, waiting to die. Uncle Beard slowly revealed the truth about the murder of the Ethiopian archbishop. It turned out that their initial target had always been the Ethiopian archbishop, because Jackson had massacred African villages along the pipeline route. While laying an oil pipeline, the mass graves were filled with corpses. At that time, unaware of the truth, Viper had even worked as a mercenary to protect these murderous devils. After learning of the refugees' tragic deaths, The Ethiopian archbishop had planned to expose the truth to the president after his speech, but Jackson had used Viper to eliminate him first. After finishing speaking, Uncle Beard shot himself. At that moment, a large group of soldiers surrounded the house. To break through the siege, Viper detonated the bombs he had planted earlier. This caused widespread destruction. A helicopter carrying ammunition circled overhead. Viper took a deep breath and focused. First, he sent the congressman to lure the helicopter away. Then, hiding in the dark, he shot and hit the rotor. The helicopter crashed and exploded. He grabbed the congressman and seized the opportunity to escape. Jackson informed Viper about the kidnapping of Sarah, and Viper also held evidence in his hand. It was a recording of Uncle Beard exposing Jackson's crimes. The two were at a stalemate. They finally agreed to meet at the top of the snow-capped mountain for a deal. Jackson stood calmly in place. From a distance, he saw a figure appear on the horizon. Without a word, he killed the figure. Sarah was in agony. Jackson, on the other hand, wore a smug smile. But the next moment, a hidden sniper was instantly killed. It turned out that Viper had been lying in ambush above, controlling the situation, and the person who fell was actually the congressman wearing body armor. Soon, the snipers Jackson had stationed in the snow were all shot dead. Viper hit every shot. With another shot, he broke the arm of one of the kidnappers. He approached Jackson and saved Sarah. Jackson, once smug, was now filled with fear. At this moment, a large number of armed FBI agents were approaching. Viper knew that the international atrocities Jackson had committed would be suppressed by the U.S. High Command, and that he himself would be silenced and dragged into a mass grave. To avoid further trouble, Viper destroyed the tape recorder and buried the evidence. Soon, Viper and Jackson were brought to a military court. Viper tried to prove that he was not the one who assassinated the archbishop. He demonstrated something. He claimed that the sniper rifle used in the murder had no firing pin, so it couldn't fire. But no one at the scene listened to this defense. Jackson swaggered out of the courtroom. The righteous judge told Viper this matter could only be solved privately. Viper, realizing the truth, was acquitted. That night, Viper, mysteriously appearing, found Jackson's hideout. Jackson was still smug about evading the law. Suddenly, a body fell from the sky. Viper shot and killed the arrogant Jackson. He then detonated a car, setting the entire wooden house on fire, erasing all traces of the murder. Finally, he disappeared, driving away with Sarah. Justice may not always prevail, but Viper pierced the darkness with a gun. This is the end of this film. See you next time. See you next time.